What's up, YouTube? Happy Saturday morning. How we doing? I missed yesterday because I was busy at work, but I wanted to do one today. So I've got a good one today. Today we're going to talk about how to stay off the blower with COVID-19. That's the affectionate word I have for the ventilator. A lot of ICU folks call it the blower. So we're going to talk about that. I kind of started down this rabbit hole a little bit because a friend asked me about vitamin D and severe COVID and the ventilator and ICU and all that stuff. So started looking into that and had some realizations and then went off into a different path, which is why I'm wearing my little exercise gear today. You're going to find out where we're going to talk about that, okay? So hopefully we have people in the chat and you guys can hear me. If you can hear me, let me know. Also, subscribe, like, share, all that stuff. If you guys like the channel, thumbs up would be great. Yeah, first, I wanted to give a little shout out here to Biodigital because I use this all the time. This is a web app. It's got awesome 3D rendering. It's amazing. I use it for my patients all the time to explain anatomy and physiology, and we're going to use it today. So I just wanted to give a shout out to these guys. They're really awesome. They let me use their web app for these videos, which not many other people can do that. So appreciate that. And there's a link to them in the descriptions. Let me just check to make sure everybody's hearing. Awesome, awesome. Okay, you guys can hear me. Sweet. So today I want to talk about like I said, how to stay off the blower. First, though, I want to look at a couple things. Like I said, I first started this because of a friend that asked me about vitamin D. So let's look at that real quick. So essentially the question was, does vitamin D help in severe COVID or ICU patients or critically ill patients? And this has been done a lot. This is from October 19th. This is just an article, but it's in regards to coronavirus as well. And basically, so this is Todd Rice. He's a physician at Vanderbilt, basically saying we can stop putting money on vitamin D to help patients who require critical illness or who require critical care. So basically, a lot of patients have been seen to have a low vitamin D in critically ill patients overall, and also COVID patients. So this was looked at and said, okay, if we increase the vitamin D in these patients, do they improve? So basically we're seeing the exact same story in critically ill COVID population as we see in the general ICU population. The whole scenario is basically repeating itself, and he's pessimistic. Still, vitamin D levels can be elevated. So in theory, let me look real quick. The thing is theory in medicine is completely different from actual application and what happens. So you have to be careful about that. So it sounds like a really great idea. Oh, they're all critically ill. They all have low vitamin D. If we give them vitamin D, they'll get better. That just doesn't happen. So I started thinking about that really and why that is. And so a lot of other research was involved, which I'm not going to show you, but basically, what do deficient vitamin D patients look like? Well, they're not outside. Okay, why are they getting deficient vitamin D? They're, malnourished. They're not outside. Where do we get the vitamin D? Obviously, the sun, right, in our food. So those are two big issues. Why are those patients like that? Well, they're probably not moving a lot. So then I made the link between, okay, let's check out, what about exercise, okay? Or activity, let's just call it activity. Patients that get more activity, do they have a better outcome? And so I kind of looked into that a little bit, talking about COVID and exercise specifically. And here's a early high dose, I want to go back. Early high dose vitamin C for critically ill patients. This is essentially saying that there was no difference. Early administration, well, I forgot to go to the thing here. So sorry about that. So conclusion of this early high dose vitamin D for critical ill patients that are deficient. Essentially, it says early administration high-dose enteral vitamin D did not provide any advantage over placebo in 90-day mortality. So that is a New England Journal of Medicine. When was that published? In December 2019. Okay, so then I said, okay, well, what about, you know, the opposite essentially of those patients? What do they look like? And so I started going and looking at exercise and COVID, and there is some data to support exercise and COVID and decreased severity of illness, let's put it that way. So you asked, can exercise protect against COVID-19? And essentially this is Claire Stevens, King's College, London, and what she's saying is exercise has a major effect on the immune system. We've known that for decades, right? Multiple studies have linked moderate exercise with decreased rates of influenza, pneumonia, and other infections, as well as chronic diseases, diabetes, and heart disease. Okay, so we kind of know that, and I talked about that a little bit in some earlier videos, but I wanted to dig deeper a little bit. So now let's look at COVID-19 exercise may protect against a deadly complication. I found this. Single session of exercise increases the production of critical antioxidant. This is called extracellular superoxide dismutase. Some of you guys know that that are in medicine or med school, helping to reduce the effects of COVID-19 infection. So regular exercise may reduce the risk of acute respiratory distress syndrome. So ARDS. ARDS is like one of the problems when you have patients on the blower. Okay, now we're putting the link, getting the link together. So patients that get on the blower have a really high mortality compared to those that never require ventilation or a ventilator. So how do you protect those? How do you protect yourself from getting on the blower in the first place? So, and what is the problem with COVID-19 and getting on the ventilator? The issue is essentially what we call acute respiratory distress disease or syndrome, and it's not quite the same. From talking with a lot of ICU doctors and stuff, it's not quite the same as what we know acute respiratory distress syndrome to be, but it's very, very similar. And so I want to take a second to kind of explain that a little bit. So let's go over here to Biodigital again, and let's look at this. And so real quick, this is a really cool 3D rendering of the lungs and how they're operating and all that stuff. And essentially you have oxygen, air coming into the trachea right here. Let me see. Let's see, so oxygen is, oops, no, I wanted to, coming into the trachea, right, with the blue stuff, and then obviously in the lung here, right superior lobe, I'm marking, you then exchange, and see these little branches here, you exchange the oxygen from the air into the blood, okay? And let me zoom in a little bit, and if we go all the way in, we can see that this is what the exchange looks like. This is the alveoli, which is a little sac, this air sac here. The air comes in here, and in this sac, it goes from the air into the tissue, into the blood. And then that oxygen is carried from this sac into the blood, into all of your organs, okay? The problem with ARDS is that these sacs get inflamed, and when inflammation happens in the body, everything swells up, okay? So you imagine you have this thin wall of this alveoli, and then when you have inflammation, and we're gonna talk about this in a second, why it's inflamed, but when you have inflammation in that wall, the body, just like when you smash your thumb, okay? What happens when you smash your thumb? It swells up. Well, you have any inflammation in the body, that essentially your body brings all the fluid there because it's bringing the cells that are going to repair it. And so if you have more fluid, then you have more swelling. And in an area like the alveoli, if you have lots of swelling and fluid, then that stops, right, or at least decreases the oxygen exchange from inside the sac into the blood vessel outside, right, through the sac wall into the blood vessel. So if you increase that diameter because of the swelling, then you're going to get less oxygen. And essentially, that's, kind of the problem with, well, that is the problem with ARDS, and that's sort of the problem with COVID. And so the question is, why is it getting so inflamed, right? And is there a way that you can prevent a lot of that inflammation so the alveoli itself, that wall, doesn't swell up and you have decreased oxygen exchange from the air in the sac of the alveoli to the blood vessel? So we're getting to it here, so hang with me though. So this is just a depiction of essentially the oxygen coming in, and you don't have the exchange with the alveoli, and so you don't have, I think, let's see, one of these other ones was showing it, maybe. What's this? Maybe, let me see. Oh, that's not really showing it. So, oh, here we go. The oxygen comes in is blue, and the carbon dioxide, you have the exchange in the lung here, and then you have the carbon dioxide comes out as green. And if you don't have that exchange, then you have just the blue stuff coming in and nothing going out. This shows a little bit of the oxygen, CO2 coming out. So, all right. So, and if we look at an X-ray, this is what we see on a regular X-ray, and you see all this black stuff here. This is all the air. So on an X-ray, the dense stuff is white, and the black stuff is very or less dense, right? And so air is the least dense. And if you have more air in here, and the sacs have lots of air, so if the sacs have lots of air, it's very black, and you see this. But if in COVID, where you have lots of fluid and inflammation, you see this. There's not very many black spots in here because those sacs are taken up with inflammation in cells and fluid. And so this is what you see in a COVID patient who's going to be intubated. In fact, you can see the ET tube. I can't write on this thing, otherwise I'd point all this stuff out. But okay, so then the question is how do you prevent that? So this paper was talking about exercise may protect against deadly complications, which is the ARDS type of problem. And it increases the production of a critical antioxidant. So antioxidants are essentially something that remove the inflammatory process or inflammatory mediators or help improve or take them away. This is called superoxide dismutase. It's EC, which stands for extracellular superoxide dismutase. There's intracellular and extracellular, so they were measuring extracellular. And so a regular exercise may reduce the risk of ARDS, major cause of death in patients with COVID-19, a top exercise researcher reports. So this is a review by Zen Han of the Virginia School of Medicine, and essentially he did a study with lots of different, he took a lot of different papers and looked at all of the superoxide dismutase papers that he could find that decreased inflammation. And what he found is he compiled an in-depth review of existing medical research, including his own research, because he's been doing a lot, looking at antioxidants known as extracellular superoxide dismutase. Our muscles, so this is a potent antioxidant that hunts down harmful free radicals, what we've talked about, right? Protecting our tissues and helping prevent disease. Our muscles naturally make extracellular superoxide dismutase, secreting it into the circulation to allow binding to other vital organs, but its production is enhanced by cardiovascular exercise. So this is pretty cool, right? But does it really work? So Yan actually went on to say potential treatments are, can we produce the extracellular superoxide dismutase, and that's a different story. But what I found was a few other papers here who talked about this exercise and superoxide dismutase. So this was a lab in Florida specialized in studying the ability for exercise to increase production increase protection from free radicals. Aerobic exercise defined by increased oxygen consumption, free radical generation is proportionate to oxygen consumption. Therefore, every exercise poses risk of free radical damage. However, the exercise creates some damage, but then it increases the superoxide dismutase over the rest of the 23 hours of the day. So if you're exercising for like one day, right? So that's pretty interesting, these guys found. So, and then this is a extracellular superoxide dismutase, molecular transducer of health benefits for exercise. Essentially, these guys found that the skeletal muscle is induced by exercise and is redistributed throughout the circulation in peripheral tissues as molecular transducer of exercise training to confer protection against oxidative stress. And oxidative stress is essentially what you're talking about when you're talking about ARDS. Okay. This is another paper from Yen, who did the same things, SOD in skeletal muscle, cachexia, and exercise tolerance in mice with congestive heart failure. And they found that it plays an important antioxidant defense function in skeletal muscle against cardiac cachexia, exercise intolerance, and CHF. So he's done a few papers about this. Found this paper article. This is in May though, so they were still calling what we have essentially sort of an ARDS in COVID. They were calling it ARDS at that time, but I think it's a little bit different. So in this paper, exercise-induced antioxidant in our body, this guy has been studying this for 10 years. And he found the same thing, extracellular superoxide dismutase breaks down free radical superoxide outside of the cells. So I think essentially this, I don't want to, there's no like silver bullet, for COVID-19, but I think this dovetails nicely into what I've talked about before and what Hopkins found in their paper is essentially patients that are kind of deconditioned, they have lots of comorbidities or they're morbidly obese, like this all fits together, right? And I think this is probably a really, like I said, it's not a smoking gun, like, oh, this is definitely going to fix everything. And also, obviously, I know that lots of patients can't exercise all the time, or lots of people. But in these studies, they kind of talk about like how much exercise is really needed to kind of protect yourself. It's, it's fairly minimal amount, 30 minutes, 20 minutes, a couple, 2 to 3 times a week. So I think this is at least a very positive look at how to prevent or at least decrease severe respiratory problems in COVID-19. And like I said, I think it fits very, very well into what we've seen in other studies. I think that preventative measures, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So that all fits together, and I hope that we can maybe share these things a little bit more. If you guys would share these videos and tell people, hey, how are you going to prevent disease, severe disease in COVID? A lot of people are, blaming lots of people of why we're having so many deaths. And with COVID and why we're having such severe disease. But I look at our population and I say, we're not healthy, we're deconditioned, we're malnourished, right? Even though somebody that eats a lot and is morbidly obese, they're still malnourished because they have poor nutrition. And so all these things together tell me that this is probably a really solid way to prevent severe disease, and that's more likely the cause of all these problems that we're having, and then maybe a higher mortality rate because we're just unhealthy people in general in the United States. So that's why I was wearing my exercise hoodie, because I think exercise is a great way to prevent, or lessen the effects of COVID-19 and severe respiratory illness. So I hope you guys liked that video. I got those really cool images from Biodigital. I really like their product. I'm not paid to promote them or anything. I just use them. I like their stuff. So if you guys want to check that out, if you would. Let me go to the questions. See, it's kind of a long video, but we'll see if anybody's still here. And if you are, maybe we will answer some stuff. Let's see. Where'd it go? Oh, there we go. So can it be administered parentally? That is one of the things that they're researching, and whether you can have, exogenous, they're talking about an endogenous or in the body, made from the body, superoxide, dismutase, and they're also doing research to see, can we make this stuff and can we deliver it to people? So that's one of the questions. That's a very good question. Cool. You guys are mostly talking about going to med school and residency and how to get in and all that stuff, and not. So we'll do some other videos on that stuff later. I really appreciate you guys watching once again. Subscribe, like, share. Give me a thumbs up if you could. That'd be great. If you don't like the video, you can give me a thumbs down. That's okay. It won't hurt my feelings that much. That's it for today. We'll talk maybe, I think, Monday, and we'll do another video. Thank you guys so much. Take care.